It started with one picture. My good friend asked me if I would take a picture of a quilt he had made. Of course I said, yes. He brought over to my home this very colorful quilt, mostly of blues and whites. It was a wonder. I was amazed at this, as it was the first quilt he had ever made. I told my good friend that if he ever created another quilt, I would once again be available to take a picture of it should he wish it. An adventure of over 10 years worth of quilt photography ensued. That's a lot of quilts. It was repeated so many times that taking pictures of quilts became routine. I watched him collect all those photographs into a book form so he could show off his work to others. The book was a tome, a grimoire of his art. I realized at this point that I knew my friend made quilts, but I never really went beyond taking pictures of them. I never really knew the process he goes through in order to make a quilt. I never knew what motivated him to make quilts. So I asked my good friend if we could spend some time together so he could show me a little on how he makes a quilt and what joy he derives from them.
Are you recording now? Hi, hi. My name is Gabby Haze, and I am a quilter. I became a quilter, sometime I want to say 10 years ago, but I don't know. I don't think it was longer than that, but it might be a lot shorter. And I became interested in quilting through another job that I had, where I had time on my hands, and I could watch public radio, public TV, and I began watching quilting shows, and I couldn't believe how interesting it was. And I thought to myself, well, one of these days I'm going to have to learn how to quilt or something. And I didn't have a sewing machine. I didn't do anything about sewing, so at some point, I got myself a sewing machine. I said, okay, I'm going to get myself a sewing machine. I'm going to learn how to quilt. Okay. So this quilt is made up of a bunch of squares, like this. And this is how the squares are made. I made a template of what I want to do. This is I went to a class to learn this. So if you cut a piece of material out like this, put my glasses on. You can sew strips of material down it, from the top to the bottom, following the line. Ow. Normally I would press them, but I'm just going to do it with my fingers. And then you do the same thing on this side. And you press this open, and then you do the same thing again. and you follow this line. Okay, and I would do the same thing on this side, and then I would do this again. And when you finish doing it all the side, you lay them over like this, and you cut off the excess, so you're back to the size of the patch, which is 6.5 inches. So that's how those patches are made. And this is what it looks like when you cut around the sides. Okay, so the star quilt, which is the pattern that this actually is you make these boxes and you sew them together. And then you sew 2 more going this way, and then you sew them this way. So that's your star pattern. And then you do it again on the next one, and that forms this. And that's how you make the stars. What happens is I make all those star squares, and then I sew them all together. Okay, and when I was thinking about making this star quilt, because a couple of people wanted star quilts, and that's a lot of little patches. In fact, it's about 200 patches a quilt. Okay, so if 3 people want that 600 patches, that's a lot of patches, baby. You know, thank God there's a lot of different colors to use. That, you know, they're all the same, but all the colors are different, and that makes it interesting. I don't. Anyway, while I was thinking about it, I thought, oh, maybe instead of doing a star like this, I thought maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll set something up like that. Wow. Instead of the star thing, and see where that takes me. Okay, so this quilt is comprised of a whole bunch of different ways to do that. Okay, so I went to a class and I learned how to make these, and I learned how to make the star blocks, and you put them together in a certain kind of way, and that makes a quilt. Okay, the improvising is this thing, which I thought, oh well, I don't have to set them like stars. I can change things around and it'll look different, but it'll still have that same quality to it, which is the black and the colors. Okay, so that's what this is, and there had been, I don't want to say almost a year prior to that, and maybe it was like, I don't know if I took the information down or just remembered it, but I remember there was a quilting store in Smithville where they said something about quilting lessons. Okay, and so the store was there, and I went to them and I said, you know, hey, this is my name, and I just bought a sewing machine and I want to learn how to quilt, but I don't know anything about sewing. And they said, well, little child, bring your sewing machine and come on down, and we'll show you. And I said, well, how much that could be? She said, oh, it doesn't cost anything, just come on down. And so I brought my sewing machine and I came down, and they showed me how to use the machine, and they gave me material and a little bit. You know, it didn't take too long, and then I went home and I started making quilts. You know, simpler things in the beginning. So that's what I've come up with so far in terms of moving things around and not having just a bunch of stars on it. And I'm happy with it. And I have one more row to go around
Very good.
the whole thing, okay? And that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do now. So, and I'm folding it up now because I'm gonna make a row and then I'm gonna sew it on. And so I'm folding it up because I sew it over there, and that's a much smaller space than the quilt is. Okay, so now I have to think about what I want to do. Oh, I know where to work. And it's something that I really like to do. I spend a lot of time thinking about quilts that I'm making, especially if I'm not sure about what comes next. So, I feel like that quilting is sort of like painting. Okay, I feel like I'm painting with material when I make quilts, just like when I was sort of like painting with thread, you know, making pictures and doing that. So I have that kind of like, sort of like abstract feeling about quilting itself. And then when I first started making quilts, I thought to myself, it's like, I make these quilts and they cost a lot of money to make. They're not inexpensive. Between the material and actually having, so I make the tops and then I take it to the quilting store, and then they put in the whatever goes in the middle, I think some kind of poly something or other, I don't know, and then back, and they do the binding, and then they have a big machine. By the time I go from starting to make a quilt until I have a quilt in my hand, it could be $250 or more having been spent. Okay, and so where does the labor come in? So I thought, you know, it's like I have to charge at least $600 for my quilts. That way I make money and they get paid for. The closest I ever came to sewing was embroidery. Okay, and I entered something in the DeKalb County Fair of like maybe the second year that we lived here, and it was a denim jacket which I embroidered. And actually what happened was I embroidered something on it. I won first place on it, and then after a number of years I gave it to someone, and then and Jesse found it in the Goat Boutique, and he said, I found this, and I said, oh God, that's my old jacket that I won first prize for. So I cut out the embroidery that was on the jacket. And this is what was on the back of the jacket, the pot leaf with all that, and that's what I won first prize for. It was so cool, I was so happy.
Wow. And nobody...
No, I won first prize.
Nobody made some big controversy out of it.
Maybe nobody knew what it was except me. I mean, I don't really know. But I love doing embroidery. I had here's something that was on the sleeve. That was embroidered on the sleeve. It was really pretty. It looked really, really nice, and I was really happy to win first prize. See these spaces? Right here?
Yes.
this is what I filled the width in when they were up here. So I had the same spaces up there, and this is what I was working with, and this is what I did. Yeah, it's kind of, that'll be the last thing I do, because the size of that, see, the size of this has to go from that end to this end, and if this is too small, you know, it's a drag, and if it's much too big, it's difficult to work with. Anyway, okay, don't go anywhere.
I didn't know anyone who could afford $600 for a quilt. I mean, that was like, it's sort of like, you know, if I could sell them, this is how much I would sell them, you know. So I started giving them to my friends. I thought that's what to do. I make quilts for the people I love, and I think about them, and then I give it to them, and I did that for a really long time. I think I've done about 25 or 30 quilts like that. After that, I think I got to a point where I couldn't think about anyone I wanted to make a quilt for, so I began making, I made a quilt, and it didn't have a label on it, you know, for so-and-so. It just had my, you know, quilts from the imagination kind of a thing. And I don't know if this is a part of why sort of like, I'm kind of like in this sort of like marketing renaissance, so to speak.
So what I'm doing is the quilt has two sides this way and two sides this way. And when you sew strips on the sides, you always sew this side first, and you make it to the size that you're sewing it on. And then when you sew this side, it would be this big, and you would have to add another one of these. So it would be longer than this. And those get sewed together that way. So I'm taking them off now because I don't need them.
I thought if I wanted, I didn't know anyone who could buy a quilt for $600, but I don't have to sell a quilt for $600. I don't have to get paid to do this. I like doing it, and it's, I don't know, what would I do if I didn't do it? I don't know, I would go crazy. It's like, thank God I worked for RFD for all those years. I always had something to do. And with quilting, I always had something to do. Otherwise, you know, I'm a simple person. I don't read, I don't know how to count.
I'm gonna sew now, so. And the most difficult part of this is making sure that everything is facing the right way and that you picked it up and it's in the right direction and this, that, and the other thing, because otherwise you have to like take the stitches out. This goes that way, and then this goes this way. I think, I hope. You could press it if you want, but also what happens sometimes is everything should be the same size. So why is this one bigger than this one? You know, that's a Zen question, folks. Really, God. You know, but nonetheless, so I kind of evening it up because when you sew it, that's a little bit of it. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. Right, that's the way I started, and this is the way I ended up. Okay.
It's called Country Lane Quilts. It's in Smithville, and it's Brenda and her sister. I don't remember the sister's name. The two of them used to own the store together, and then the sister's husband got unhappy and said she couldn't do it anymore. So the sister stopped doing it, and it's just I think it's just Brenda now.
Yeah.
You know, but she has a gigantic quilting machine. It's like really big, and they do really good work, and they're fun people to be around. The thing that they don't have is they don't have a really good quilt material selection because it's a small store, and most people in sort of more rural places are not into a lot of sort of like the crazier kinds of things, fabrics and that kind of stuff, you know.
You need, there's a little bit of something here. I don't know what it is. You maybe press these seams open. I seen something on a video the other day when you have a lot of thickness there.
Right, to press them open.
If you'll press it open.
I did with these. I didn't do it with
Yeah, that one there really needs it because they all come to it.
Yeah, okay,
they
I
all
see.
come into it. So if you
Okay.
could do that one, see, that would really.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be less thickness on that knot. Yeah.
Cool.
But I saw that and I thought, I'm telling.
Right, and this is for that, piano quilt thing that I'm going to make.
Yes.
The musical instruments.
Ooh,
musical
I like that. I
things.
like it.
Are you the one that's been making those beautiful quilts
Yes.
that I've been?
Yes,
I think
that's
so,
John
thank you.
Harris.
Oh, well.
And she does the embroidery.
Oh, wow.
And
Well, showing my quilt.
she has done
Oh, yeah, show
she
me.
has done embroidery the calendar months, and each month had a different, like December was it Christmas?
Yeah.
And then she had one that had churches on it. Some of them had not pews, but the little bridges with the rivers
And
under them.
you do the embroidery?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
She done
so-
it all, but she does a lot of embroidery.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. Oh, you embroider beautifully.
I told her, I said, that's so pretty that dove looks
Do you
like
have a
he's-
machine or you do it by hand?
I do that by hand.
Wow. Yeah, because the stitches are so small.
But I did find a store in Lebanon, Lebanon Sew and Vac. I think they did vacuum cleaners too, which was like phenomenal. It was like this gigantic store, and they had all kinds of fabulous material and panels and fabulous people to talk to.
So this is the quilting machine that I was telling you about the other day, where I bring in my top, and then she puts in the batting and the backing and sets it all up. And then the machine goes back and forth and back and forth, creating these designs.
I make the top, okay, and then I take it to the quilting store, where she has batting, which goes in the middle. I also buy a back, like that's material, and she has them in packages, and they're usually, and they're large pieces of materials. Like most of the material is like a yard, okay, but these are maybe 108 inches by 108 inches, so you can use one piece of material for the back where you're not cutting things out and that kind of a thing. And maybe they're sure around $30 or so. So I buy one of those when I see one, which I think would work really well with a quilt that I'm making. Okay, and they have this big machine there, which is, I bet it's 8 or 9 feet across, maybe even a little bigger than that. It's flat, and it has all these rolling things on it, and she takes the top and the batting and the back, and she puts it in the machine, and she stretches it and does whatever is needed to do with all the clips and everything to make it fit. And then they have it's a computerized thing, and they have all these different patterns they have sewn in material, and you can pick out a pattern and they punch a button and they put in the thread. You can have different color thread, and it starts and it goes back and forth, and while it's going back and forth, it's going this way. It's creating the design, you know, the butterflies or the or the trees or that, and that's how it works.
I'm fixing to baste it. I always baste it, and that way everything stays pretty straight and
Could you
uniform.
explain to me what basting means?
Basting is a looser stitch around the edge that takes all 3 layers together. And it puts all 3 of these sandwiches them together, and they won't shift and move. And then when I go to get through and get ready to put the final finish on the outside, I'm covering that when I do a binding over it. It covers that up and everything just holds it perfect. Keeps me busy with all these strings. Usually I string them. If I see them on there, I try to de-string them before I start. And I'm lining him up. Make sure he's in it. There we go. Okay, he's a little bit out, so I'm gonna put him back in. Okay. It's computerized, but sometimes there's a little bit more to it than you realize. Just don't pay attention. And I said, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, they take everything for granted. You know, you go to a big chain store, and then one girl had went and she bought the same stuff and came in here and I had it. She did twice what my price was. And I said, you should have come here first. And she said, well, I didn't dream about you having it. And I said, now you know. I said, a quilt shop has to have fabric because we have to do stuff with it. So you have to have some fabric. And so I've been doing a lot more than normal, but I've been sewing more than normal too. So it's come out to be pretty good, you know.
And then when that's done, they take it off and they put a binding around the edges because the edges are exposed. And that's what that white binding is out there on that other thing. That's what that is, the binding that goes around the edges. I choose the material, I can use the design, everything, and that process outside of the top, which I make, I bring it to the store. I pay for the back, so I bring it to the store, and she's making the quilting part. That could run $150 because they charge by the inch. So it depends on how many inches. The bigger the quilt, the more you had to pay. I think the quilt that you just took the picture of was like $148, you know. So that on top of the material, that's why you know, even $300 is, you know, it's making it, but you know, it's like, I'm not making any money. I'm just having a good time. I think the next level is, you know, like what else don't I know? Like what other technique is there, and the what's next kind of thing. So like, so there are other things like that that are around, and I like making quilts without a pattern. I like making them. I like doing that. But every once in a while, I'll run into a pattern. I see a pattern someplace or something like that. Like there's a quilting sort of app that I have on my iPad that, you know, keeps sending me stuff that I keep looking at, and then every once in a while buying something from them. And every once in a while I run into a pattern which I found it's really interesting, and I've made a couple of really interesting quilts. I made a couple of three-dimensional maze quilts, one for Andrew and one for my friend Tim Wolf, the three-dimensional ways. And then the stair one that I made for Chris, you know, that up and down staircase thing, that was a pattern. I really, really like doing that. Yeah. Most of the quilts that I make that are not pattern quilts are not quilts that are sort of like thought out of in the whole. It's like I don't design a quilt and then make it. I think to myself, oh God, that's going to make a nice quilt. So I have a panel, but that's all I have. I don't have a design around that panel. I haven't made a quilt out of that panel, thinking, go to the graph paper and do this, that, and the other thing and draw it out and everything like that. I kind of build it in layers, and so the thing about that I like is that I'm never bored because I'm always thinking about, okay, I've sewn this, now what am I going to do next? You know, what's going to work? How am I going to fit this out? You know, oh my God, don't tell me, you know, it's like, and sometimes it works out really well, and sometimes I'm unhappy. If I'm really unhappy, I put it away and start on something else. God. But I like that aspect of it. I like the idea of not having, I like pattern quilts, but I like having it the other way as well.
And now comes the dangerous part. Now I'm going to cut it, and once you cut it, you can't put it back together. So I'm kind of like,
yeah, and I hope, and I would like that to continue. Meryl said, why don't you have business cards? I had business card created. I made a business card. So I have a business card.
what I want to do is I want to cut it so that when I sew it to the other piece, it looks like it looked over there.
I understand.
Okay. So, it's a little bit more than I need. Whoops.
I feel really fortunate that that I kind of like, I don't know, stumbled in some kind of way onto quilting. I think it really plays an important part of my life. I know it contributes, I'm sure it contributes to my happiness because I like doing it. It makes me feel good. You know, even the parts that get a little tedious or I can't figure something, you know, something out, all of that is an aside to the general feeling of, you know, and I don't have to be making a quilt for anybody to feel that. I just like making quilts. You know, I like doing that, and I feel very fortunate to have quilting in my life, and wow. Someone, maybe Jai or somebody, a couple of years ago, approached me and said, you know, how would you think about, you know, like hanging your quilts at the art center for a month or so? And we had an opening, we had a reception. I put up, I don't know, 10 or 12 or more quilts, and people came, and I got a lot of nice compliments and feedbacks and things like that. I don't think I ever sold any quilts as a result of the show, although one never knows about, you know, someone thinking about it, going away and then coming back and then deciding, oh, maybe, you know, because they saw them. So, and I like doing it. I mean, I like having the quilts displayed and all of that. And this is the same thing with the last art show. You know, Jai said, you know, I'm doing my lamps. Would you like to do your quilts? We, you know, have a small space to do it in. And so that's, you know, that's what happened.
One of the things I enjoyed about your art display the first time was that you had a lot of people who were there who owned the quilts that were hanging.
Right, yeah.
I found that really, really enjoyable to have people give their personal views on it and to proudly stand next to their quilt.
Uh-huh.
Right, I
You know,
remember that.
Yeah.
I remember
and
that.
how many people were there
Yeah.
just to do that and have a picture taken of
Yeah.
them.
One of the last one was a smaller show because the gallery wasn't available. They were doing something else, so there was only maybe 4 or 5 quilts that I had put up, and that kind of a thing. And they would have pictures of those. Yeah, I think so. I've gotten, people always compliment me, and I've gotten compliments. I saw it. I went to the art show and I saw your quilts and that kind of a thing, and they looked how lovely and this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, that was really, really nice. Yeah, and I'm not I'm not a business person,
Right.
so I'm not it's like I don't have a website and I don't have all of those kinds of things. I don't really know, and also, it's like professionally speaking, like people who make quilts to show at art shows professionally, I think are much more concerned with the perfections of their quilt, that every little corner meets and that every little stitch counts and everything. And I'm not like that. It's like I'm less, if something is a little off, then it's a little off. It's like, and maybe someone will notice and maybe someone will not. But if your quilts are in a show where they might be giving awards for that kind of a thing. I was thinking of, and I don't know if they'll do the White Oak Fair this year again because of the quarantines and pandemic and everything, but I was thinking of maybe getting a booth this year at the White Oaks Fair, and then just, I don't think they're that big, but it might be big enough for me to hang 3 of my quilts up with a table with my quilt books, which show the other quilts, and and just let people admire them, and then talk to them about, show them the books, and if people are interested that way. They're doing craft shows at the distillery now. They did a few last year, and I displayed my quilts last year in one of the shows. I didn't sell any, but I had a number of people complimenting on them and that kind of a thing.
And where was that? Maybe for the audience, where was that?
Where was it? Oh, it was at the Short Mountain Distillery.
Thank you for the clarification.
Right, they have craft shows, and I was really surprised at the number of craft booths they had and the number of people. The place was packed. I couldn't believe how many people there. It was a lot of fun just sitting there because the weather was warm. I was sitting outside
nice.
watching people and cruising a little and sipping a mint julep. Yeah, I think if they do other craft shows, then I will do them, especially, at the distillery. If they do other craft shows at the distillery, then I will partake in that, because I can do that. Billy lets me do that for nothing. I don't have to pay for it, and I just hang them around on the side, so I don't have to have a booth and all of that kind of stuff. If people didn't ask for quilts, I would think of, I'm going to make a quilt for love. And then I would tell her, I'm making a quilt for you, and when I do that, and I gave them to people, I would, do what we did with Maxine and Roquet, let them turn them around and lay out the quilt, and then have them learn. I love doing that. I love to see the expressions on their faces. I find that very rewarding.
It's got my songs on it. Wow. Oh my gosh. This must have taken forever. Look at the detailing. The music, treble clef, bass clef. Oh, Gabby.
Well, thank you. Thank
Holy
you very
shit.
much. It was a lot of fun to do.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness.
Okay, so you need to turn turn, try this end, turn it this way.
Oh, okay.
No, just turn it.
Oh, turn it.
Turn it in.
Oh.
And now turn the other side.
Oh my God. Oh. Really? Oh my goodness.
Lay it down.
I'm just gonna, at home, I'm just gonna walk around the house with this on me, just everywhere. I also really like the color blue.
That's what Maxine said. I said, well, what color does he like?
I mean, I like them all, but blue.
No,
in
that's what he
particular,
said. He said blue, especially blue.
Wow.
So how do you feel being a recipient of an original Gabby quilt? You're part of an elite club.
You know, I'm going to take good care of it, and it'll be part of my estate, and someday it'll probably worth a lot of money. It'll be worth a lot of money. A Gabby Haze original.
Let's hope it lasts that long.
And what are you feeling there?
Grateful. I mean, I could just see the detailing. A lot of time and thought went into this, and I'm just, you know, I think, to me, some of the best, most beautiful art are the kind of art that looks seamless and easy. But this kind of work is not easy. And I think that's all the more reason why it's so special. So.
Well, thank you. But I have to say, you know, it's not easy, but it's really not hard once you learn how to do it.
Mm. Wow, and the detailing. I mean, it's my tattoo. It's right there.
Yeah, the quilting, that's all done at the quilt shop.
Oh, all this stuff?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the quilt. I make the top, and then I bring it to the quilt shop, and they put in the batting, and they make the labels, and then the backing material I have.
But you came up with the design.
Yeah, I make, yes, and then I pick the design. You know, when Maxine said, would you make a quilt for OK, and the theme would be music, you know, that's when I, went and found, the piano material and the different kinds of things like that to make it personal for them.
It makes the quilts that much more charming, that much more valuable as a gift from a friend.
Right.
For example, I'm all about tie-dye and crazy colors, and what did you do for me but a wonderful quilt that matches my personality, and there's so many.
Shattered glass.
Yes, shattered glass. That's me. So, I mean, I can think of a whole slew of quilts that you've made for your friends where they all tie in much more intimately with them.
Okay, well, good. Yeah.
So, and I just thought that was important that we share that part of it.
Okay. And now I'm going to sew it on. And before I sew it on, I'm going to pin it. What happens is, if I didn't pin it and I sewed it on, this piece would wind up being shorter than the quilt because materials tend to bunch up. So I'm going to pin it so that hopefully it'll all stay in the same place and go from the top to the bottom. Yeah, my fantasy is to have two things I would like. I would like to have an embroidery machine. Yeah, I feel I could really be creative with an embroidery machine. And I would like to have a long arm quilting machine. I would like to be able to do the quilting, okay, because now I take it to the quilting place. I know someone else who makes quilts, it's not Marion, but it's, she was married to Rayan's dad, Gwen, okay. She makes quilts. I'm humbled by her quilts. But one of the things that she has, going back to another subject,
which allows her to do things that I can't do. Is she has a long arm quilt, so she can do. Okay, so the quilt store has these patterns that go back and forth, and what I want is I have a long arm quilting thing, which is a smaller kind of quilting thing, but instead of having a machine that goes back and forth, you have an arm that you can move around. Okay, and that way you can create designs, and if there's, you know, a flower, you could embroider around the flower. I can do that now with this machine, but it's really a slow process. You know, with this long arm thing, you're moving, and you have a big space, so you can outline things. You could, if there's water, you can make waves. Okay, just by quilting, you can have that design, and I would really like to be able to do that. I think it would add a whole other dimension.
Okay, there's one more thing left to do. After taking out the pins. I'm gonna iron it and fold it over so that I can see what it looks like. I can put it down, see how it worked. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, I think they call it setting the seam. I'm going to take the iron and go over the seam where I sewed it. Okay. And now I'm going to turn it over and sew it down. I mean, not sew it, but iron it down.
What's the lesson I learned in all of this? What am I taking away from this video adventure into another person's passion? What I learned is this: check in with your friends more. Find out something about their creative bent that you think you know, but you really don't. If they cook, play music, paint, teach, farm, write, whatever, anything that you know your friends do but never actually see them do it, their process. How do they do the thing they do? Why do they do the thing they do? Trust me, it will be rewarding to immerse yourself for a bit in the thing that your friend is known for. You will know them better. You will know yourself better.
I'm not going to lay out the whole quilt. I'm just going to lay out the part that I did.
Now let's leave so Gabby can finish his work.
Hi. Hi, my name is Gabby Haze, Haze, and I make quilts.
This story doesn't end here. I just got a text from Gabby. I have another quilt to photograph. See you in another 10 years?